What is up? What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to a special post-game recap. Mariners defeat the Yankees and continue to be a whirlwind up and down team that I cannot figure out, but they do get an important win today, 3-2 over the Yankees. MarinersSUR is joining me for this one today. As always, do me a favor, like, comment, subscribe on the channel. MarinersSUR's Twitter X account will be in the description down below. Head over there and follow him on Twitter, one of the best Mariner accounts on there. And we are going to break down the game, and we'll talk about the still looming possible playoff scenarios that are alive. I have declared this season dead about 27 times, give or take, within the last month, but the hope still remains. So how are you doing today, my friend?
Doing well. I'm glad the Mariners were able to salvage a game today, and the Twins went down. So, yeah, still gives us a glimmer of hope, which is good. So doing well.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to watch the game today. I was at work. I listened to it a little bit. I kind of was in a mood of like, you know what, if they win, great, but I don't really want to listen to it. And of course they get up 3-0 and I start getting invested. Anything that stood out to you in this game today? Good to see Logan Gilbert get a W. I feel like it's been a while. Munoz locked it down in the 9th, and only offense in one inning, but enough to get a pretty big win today.
Yeah. It was a solid win in terms of offense. They didn't do a ton. Like you said, they got all 3 runs in the first inning. Part of that was Dominguez dropped like a routine fly ball in left field, but we took advantage of it with a sac fly after that, and JP, I believe, a single with 2 outs. So yeah, I mean Yankees kind of left the door open. They took advantage of it with an extra run there. But yeah, I think the thing that stood out was pitching was really good. Gilbert definitely, you had to kind of grind through this to get through 5 1/3, but I think he had 9 strikeouts. So really good outing. And then once again, I mean, the bullpen was fantastic. Chargois came in, got the last 2 outs in the 6th. When they took him out, I was a little bit surprised when they took Gilbert out because he had just punched out the guy for the first out. I think it was around 90, 95 pitches, but turned out being the good move. Chargois had an uneventful 6th. And then, Troy Taylor was fantastic through the top of the, kind of the meat of the Yankees lineup. He's just been, incredible since he's been called up. Trent Thornton came in the 8th, and I think 5 or 6 pitches got it done. I was looking, he's got like a 2.30 ERA in the last 15 games. So he's really kind of bounced back. And then Munoz, this, against the Yankees this series, he's good as he's looked all year. His velocity was touching 100, super sharp slider. He fell behind Wells 3-0 in the first at bat, but then after that, his command was just locked in. So for me, I think the main takeaway was the pitching was outstanding on the heels of really shutting down the Yankees last night too. And so, not a surprise, but it's always, I think, reassuring to see our pitching kind of handle what I think is the best lineup in the AL, in the Yankees and back-to-back games after a rough game 1. And it's just one of those things too that makes me so badly hope that we can somehow pull a rabbit out of the hat and make the playoffs, because this pitching is good enough to shut down anyone and give you a chance in, a playoff series. So yeah, I think the main takeaway is just, really, really outstanding pitching.
Yeah, and good to see, like I said, Trent Thornton pitching in the 8th and getting it done. This bullpen is needed, all hands on deck with obviously, Matt Brash. We've been dealing with that all year, but Santos being off and on, Jimmy Garcia goes down. Snyder not available today after going 2 innings yesterday. So Thornton has started out really good, then was really rocking. There was a point where I was kind of like, is he going to get DFA'd here for a little bit? And then he's actually quietly been pretty solid the last month or so. And big outing today to help the team, because that's a dangerous spot there with Trent Thornton versus the Yankees lineup. So feel good about that. And like you said, and really, I don't want to harp back on it. I talked about enough last night, but man, it makes last night so frustrating. You find a way to win that one. And you said it before we came on, they win yesterday, which was right there for them. Even in that 10th inning, still down 2-1. We don't need to rehash what happened. We all saw it, but they do that. They're 1 game out of this right now.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it makes last night's loss all the more frustrating for sure, because like you said, it was a game that was right there for them. So many innings where leadoff guy was on. I felt like they left runs on the table. And then, the 10th inning, it couldn't have been any more frustrating. So yeah, that loss definitely hurts more at this point. I think, it hurt a ton in the moment, but it's definitely something I've thought about many times today, that God, we'd only be 1 game out of this with 9 to go if we just would have found a way to get yesterday. And to win a series against the Yankees would have felt really, really good too. So definitely a huge missed opportunity that's, kind of glaring at this point.
Yeah, and one thing I've said to, anybody listening to this knows I've talked about it, and I kind of feel bad about it because I felt so whiplash with this team. Like last night, I was like, that's it, we're done. Then I'm like, oh, hey, they win, they're 2 back. And it's like I go back and forth every night. Well, one thing that's happening, the reason for that, the reason we're still having hope, the Minnesota Twins are in a pretty massive collapse right now. I think you said before we hopped on, they're 10-20 in their last 30 games.
Yeah.
So even if the Mariners are 15-15 over that stretch, I'm not sure what they are, but let's say something close to that. That's 5 games you've gained on a team right there. So despite all of this and despite all the frustrations, and they're legit, and anybody watching this, again, I apologize for the whiplash to anybody listening, but the Mariners are 2 games out of this, and Minnesota's going to Boston this weekend. That's kind of a house of horrors for any team historically. The Mariners go and play Texas without Corey Seager. Now you're not going to have Logan going in the series or Castillo. So you're going to need, I think it's going to be Emerson Hancock,
Kirby Hancock,
and Wu.
Set up. Yep.
So it's not going to be easy, but how are you feeling about this? Because every day it changes for me. I don't know. I'm just like, fast forward me to the end of the season and just tell me what happens.
Yeah, I agree. It's been a ton of whiplash. A very interesting season. Early on, you build a 10-game lead over the Astros. A lot of that wasn't necessarily our doing. I think at 44-31, you're pacing for 92, 93 wins. So we played well enough to have a division lead, but a lot of that was just due to the Astros stumbling out of the gates. So, you felt good at the lead, but at the same time, it's like, all right, Astros are going to, catch fire, which they did. So in a way, I didn't feel as good as I probably would have normally with the 10-game lead. And then kind of same with how we've closed the gap. We haven't, went 20-10 necessarily. It's been the Twins collapsing. And so in a way, you don't feel great because we're not getting those nightly wins, but then you look at the standings and you have a chance. And so it's a really weird, I think, situation as a fan to be in. Cause we're sitting at 3 games over 500, and you would think, the season would be over. God, Jerry in his tenure has been so good at missing the playoffs and winning 86 to 90 games. And it's just one of those years where you wish you would be targeting 86 to 88 wins because, that likely would make the playoffs this year. So it's a bummer that, we're having kind of this down year in a year where 88 wins gets you into the playoffs. And, they've got there the last 3 years and only made it one of those years. So kind of unfortunate timing. But yeah, we got a chance with 9 games to go. I wish we, controlled our destiny a little bit more, but it'll at least make the last 9 games interesting. And, I figure you probably have to win all 3 series here on out. And odds are you probably need to sweep one of them too, unless the Tigers and Twins collapse. So Texas will be tough. You face DeGrom, Scherzer, and Haney. But, like we saw in that series against Texas last time, DeGrom and Scherzer are probably throwing 5 innings and no more. So I think that helps. It's going to give you a chance against their bullpen. You really need Kirby and Wu in games 1 and 3 to be, on top of their game. And ideally you can scratch out 1 to 2 against DeGrom, Scherzer, and then get after the bullpen. And, hopefully Hancock in game 2 can give you, 5 innings of 2-3 runs, whatever it may be, and just give the team a chance, which he's been good at. So, every game at this point's big, but I think tomorrow's critical with Hancock going in game 2. And if you can beat DeGrom in game 1, I think you got to be feeling, pretty good. So like I said, every game's massive, but I think for me, game 1 tomorrow's probably the biggest of the series just because it's the next one up, but also just kind of how the pitching matchups line up in game 1 and 2. If you can still win with DeGrom, that's huge. So yeah, excited for 5 p.m. tomorrow.
Yeah, no, same. And listen, a couple interesting things that we talked about again before coming on was some of the scenarios for the Mariners getting the playoffs. Because I know I can hear the people screaming, they're not 2 games back. They're 3 back of Minnesota and Detroit because of the tiebreaker, which is correct. But we did a little digging before we came on here. There is a possibility because the Mariners' last 9 games are all divisional games. And for anybody that doesn't know, if you're tied, so let's say the Mariners and Twins, and let's say they split the season series and you're tied. The next tiebreaker is divisional record in your own division. So there is a scenario in a 3-way tie with the Mariners, Tigers, and Twins that the Mariners actually would have the tiebreaker based on divisional record. And truthfully, if it does get to that point, I think the Mariners will have the tiebreaker because they're going to have to win these. I mean, if they lose these games, it doesn't matter anyways, because they're just going to be eliminated from losing these divisional games, or losing these games in general. So if it does come to that, there's a decent chance the Mariners do actually have the tiebreaker if all three are tied. I know people are tired of hearing this, but it is a scenario. And then you made a great point. I'll let you elaborate on a little bit about the Astros. And I know the AL West, I keep talking about on my show, hey, get to 3 games back. You never know, sweep that series. But talk a little bit about what you were saying about that, about the division.
Yeah, I think at this point, if the Astros winning tonight, they're 5 games up. Angels are so incredibly banged up now with like Adele, Pilar, Rendon, and Ben Joyce on the IL, and the Astros are just handling them too well. But at this point, they have 3 games left. I either want the Astros to lose those next 3. If they're not going to, we'd almost just rather they sweep the Angels, because say they sweep the Angels and we take 2 or 3 from Texas, we are 6 back with 6 to go. So if the Astros win, say game 1 in that series against us next week, they would clinch the AL West. And then at that point, you're going to see the Astros benching and not letting starters go super deep in games 2 and 3, probably not letting relievers go back to back. So I think, at this point, either get swept or sweep the Angels. That way, if they take a game against us, we're not going to be, facing a fully loaded Astros team in, 1 or 2 of those games. So that's kind of where I'm at with that one is, I think the worst thing that could happen is they take 3 or 4 or even split, and now they have to win, all 3 games to clinch. So just kind of another, I think, thing to monitor at this point is, either just kind of run away with it and get it over with, or drop the next 3 and give us some hope in the AL West going into next week.
Yeah, and I love it because it's always things I try to think about. I'm like, well, would Houston losing it might be more beneficial if they can get to that point where they can clinch. Because listen, I know I've talked about it. It's a pipe dream that you could sweep them. Your best case scenario might be to win 2 out of 3. It's going to be hard to go into Houston and sweep. So you got to assume they're probably going to get 1. If it is, you let them, they take game 1. Like you said, they're resting guys, maybe a little hungover from celebrating, and you got a chance to take the next 2. And maybe that's enough to gain ground on Minnesota and Detroit here. And, I thought you made a great point earlier with this team. It's just kind of funny how they've missed out on the playoffs with 87, 88 wins a few years. And this is the year where that would have 100% gotten them in the playoffs. It's a very Mariners thing to have happened to them. And again, like I said, I know, and I know I've said this 5 times already, but the whiplash with the playoff stuff. Listen, guys, everybody listening, I get it. I'm not trying to say, oh, see, they're right back in this thing. But we've got 9 games to go. We've got to talk about it. I mean, they are in this mix here. So, it is something to discuss with it. We talked a little about we haven't talked about it much, but on the show, at least, the Twins and Tigers schedule coming down the stretch. We know Minnesota's in Boston. Detroit's is a little easier, but they do have 3 games against Baltimore. I'll get your thoughts on it. Kind of feel like you're hoping there's Baltimore just sweeps them, because the Tigers play the White Sox, then you got to figure they're going to sweep there. So your best bet is the Orioles to do some damage, I would think.
For sure. And unfortunately, the Orioles aren't playing well at all right now. I don't know what their record is in the last 20 or 30. I just know everything you read says the Orioles are, they're 3-7 in their last 10. They do have Corbin Burns going tomorrow. I don't think the Tigers will have Skubal going in this series because I think he threw yesterday. So, really need the Orioles to sweep them, because then after that they play the Rays, who are decent. I think it'd be tough for the Tigers to sweep the Rays, but then again, the Tigers are just beating everybody. They just swept, the Royals, and then they finished with the White Sox. So hopefully the Orioles can sweep them just to, then say we take 2 or 3. That means we can kind of catch the Tigers and get even with them and see where we can go from there. So they're definitely a real threat at this point with their schedule remaining and then just how well they're playing. Like I said, they seem to find a way to win every single game, which is kind of what we saw when we play them. That was right at the front end of them going on this hot streak. And so just baseball is a weird sport, and sometimes teams just catch fire like this and figure out how to win games. And that's kind of where they're at. So if I had to pick between the Twins, Tigers, and Mariners at this point, with the Twins in a tailspin and the Tigers having a essentially a 3-game head start on us unless it ends up in a 3-way tie. I'd probably predict the Tigers to make the playoffs at this point. So, yeah, I mean, they're a real threat.
It's crazy. I mean, I honestly, it was so funny. I remember, I think we were messaging, we're like, oh, the Tigers are like 4.5 back now or something. And I just had never even really considered them in the hunt. And now here it is. And I think, and they're tied with Minnesota right now. I think you can make a strong case. They probably should be the favorites. And if they can, I'm not sure if it's in Detroit or Baltimore, but if they can find a way to win 2 out of 3, I think it's pretty much a lock that they get this. And like I said, baseball is just funny. Minnesota's in a tailspin, and it is hard to get out of it. I mean, we've seen it with the Mariners over the years. And man, when you get hot too, you go into games. I remember a little bit in 2022 when the Mariners made the playoffs, and it was like you just turn on TV, like, how are they going to win this one? They'd get down. There was a series in Texas when they were in that 14-game winning streak where they were down like 4-0 in the 7th inning in the first game. And I was like, I'm still fine. I think they're still going to pull this out. You know, it's just amazing how baseball works with that. And that's, I'm sure, what Tiger fans are really feeling right now. You know, we talked a little bit about the Texas series in Houston and Oakland to finish it up for the Mariners. You know, where are you at overall with the team? Because it's so tough for me to break it down because, like, I've talked about the Jerry stuff and my frustrations, but this team could still somewhat realistically be World Series champions. They've also, I think, really kind of underachieved this year, but they're still kind of right there in the playoff mix. So I've had a really hard time, and I think that's why I have so much whiplash with them, knowing what the team is, because they're in the race. They're not awful. Like, they're clearly a decent baseball team. They're not where we want them to be, but they could still wind up, you know, we could be doing a playoff preview series in a couple weeks. Where are you at with this team right now?
Yeah, I think it's just, I mean, I'd say frustrated overall for the year. You know, I was looking earlier, we have the same amount of wins as the Astros against teams that are over 500. And I feel like except for the Dodgers series where they just kind of, I don't want to say dominated us because there was like that game late where Hayward hit the home run off Munoz, but you know, that's just one series where I feel like we looked like clearly outclassed. But for the most part, I feel like we've played good teams well. You know, 3-1 against the Padres. We went 3-4 against the Yankees. You win yesterday, which was a toss-up. You're 4-3. So, you know, I see us how we play. You know, swept the Mets. You know how we play good teams. I think very competitively. I'm like, all right, this team is decent. But then I think the frustration is, you know, 1-8 in our last 9 against, you know, the Angels, that 1-8 road trip. And so, you know, it's just frustrating to see how we played against mediocre teams. And it, you know, kind of makes you think like maybe we're not that good. So I don't know what to make of them. I do think the offense has been better overall lately. You know, we kind of struggled a little bit in the Yankees series. But yeah, I just come down to, you know, the last 6 hitting additions, you know, Garver and Polanco have been awful, you know, all year long, but Robles, Luke Raley, Justin Turner, Randy Arozarena, you look at those 4 numbers and they've been really good in Mariners uniform. So, you know, 4 of the last 6 hitters we've added have done pretty well, right? So you have to give Jerry credit for that. But I don't know. I just think if even, you know, if you look at JP, Julio, Crawford, Polanco, I think if two of those 4 had kind of not even career years, it's years that you would kind of expect like what they were projected for, you know, we're probably tied with the Astros and 2 or 3 games up in the wild card. So I do think they kind of woefully have underperformed in quite a few areas. And then, you know, missing on Garver and Polanco obviously hurt because Robles was added later on in the year and same with Turner and Randy. But I mean, the 3 in-season additions of the lineup have been fantastic. I mean, Turner's been on fire lately. And Randy's been, I think, frustrating. Like I'm always surprised when I look at his numbers in a Mariners uniform because he's just had so many like uncompetitive at bats and bad stretches, but overall he's been good. So I think overall frustrating. And I do think the team is better than their record. You even look at like their run differential and expected win-loss. Not that that's everything. It's better than where we're at. And then I think, yeah, the bullpen, it's just been, I think injuries have really hurt that particular area of the ball club where, you know, Brash goes down, then Santos would be your next setup man, and then he's hurt. And then you go get Yimi Garcia to try to correct that, and he barely pitches. You know, Spire was supposed to be a back-end guy, and he got hurt. I don't think he's really been healthy, it doesn't seem. So I think bullpen, I just would chalk that up to injuries this year. Yeah, I think overall just frustrating. Yeah, for me, it's kind of hard of what to make of this team. Of like, was it just poorly constructed, or did the players that were key, have kind of unpredictable and unseen, really not even just down years where they had like a 95 WRC plus. I mean, just putrid seasons from, JP, Garver, and Polanco in particular, and then Julio, being more of a above average player overall than a superstar that, you'd kind of expect him to be. So yeah, I think a frustrating year is what I would chalk it up to at this point. But hopefully they can wipe all that away over the next 9 games and kind of have a miracle finish and make us all forget about that to an extent.
Yeah, and that's one thing I've kind of talked about in my recaps is as frustrating as it's been for all these guys we've talked about, and I'm with you on all of them, but if you can somehow like finish strong, have a great 9 games and get this team in the playoffs, like let's just say, example, like Mitch Garver just goes off in the final 9 games. He's probably not going to play that much, but just hypothetically, and this team goes 8-1 and they're in the postseason and Garver has a big postseason. It's like you can still salvage this season. It can still be a good season for you. It's not a team that's 57-90, and even if you finish 9 games strong, no one's going to remember it. So you do still have a chance to make an impact. And that's kind of, I think, if I was Dan, kind of the message I'd be saying, like, listen, I know some guys have not performed up to their level this year, but you can still have a special moment, a moment that the city will remember you for in the final 9 games here. So I'm with you though. Overall, I think frustrating is just the perfect word. Even these last few weeks, like there's part of me, it's like, oh, of course they won today. Right after I'm done, every time I'm done, they win the next day. It's almost frustrating too. I'm happy they win. Everybody want them to win every game, even if they're 38-100. I want them to win, but it's just like, guys, like I can't figure this out. Stop giving me the whiplash with this team. So I think frustrating is really the perfect word for the 2024 Mariners. And I would also just say, for me at least, confused, because it's rare. Like 22, even though Baltimore was kind of there, we knew the Mariners were going to get in the playoffs. Baltimore wasn't quite ready, hadn't ascended yet. They were kind of teetering 4 or 5 games back. Even when the Mariners lost that heartbreaker to Kansas City, the 11-2 lead game, it didn't even bother me that much. Like, you're not winning the division, so like you'll just clinch in a couple days anyways. I mean, it stunk, but it wasn't that big a deal. And then, through other playoff seasons, they've just kind of been in position to get in. This is just so bizarre because I really find this team so frustrating and just, I can't stand it sometimes. And yet again, and I know people are rolling their eyes at me, and in 2 months, they could win the whole dang thing. So it's just like, and it would be very Mariners to have like one of the most mid seasons ever turn into a World Series win somehow. That would kind of cap it all off for us. So I'll put you on the spot a little bit here, but do they find a way? Do they get in here? Or is it just going to be no tiebreakers except for the 3-way tiebreaker and too little too late?
I mean, I'd love to say that I think they'll pull it off, but I think it's probably too little too late. Once again, if they would have won yesterday, I think I even said this before we hopped on, I'd be feeling fairly confident. But I just think too little too late. And they haven't really shown the ability to go, going into the Yankees, we did go 8-3 in our last 11. So I guess they have shown an ability to go win 7 out of 9. I just think facing DeGrom and Scherzer in this series is tough. Going to Houston, getting 2 out of 3, and then that's what you have to do is say go 4-2 in these next 6, and then you probably have to sweep Oakland. And Oakland, I think, is tough to sweep because they have enough bats in their lineup, and then like Mason Miller at the back end. I was just looking, I think there will face Sears, Estes, and whoever else. I just think the 3 teams we face, it's tough to sweep any of them, and then to not lose a series, and then not having Castillo too. But I don't, this weekend it's 9 games left. Everyone's big, but it's huge this weekend to get within a game or even tied. And there's just so much help we need, and not just from, if the Tigers were behind us, I'd probably feel a bit differently just because the Twins do finish with a tough schedule. But then even then with them, I think they finish with the Orioles, and there's a decent chance the Orioles are locked into wild card 1. And then that last series against the Twins, they're going to be sitting guys and not letting starters go deep and setting up their rotation. So there's just so much out of our control that can go wrong that gives me pause. But yeah, I mean, if this weekend goes well, though, that answer could definitely change. So we'll see. What's your take on it?
Again, to make it boring, I'll just say ditto. But I mean, it really is. I'm with you. I think this series this weekend, if they can go in there and have a big series that they sweep, which is possible, I'll probably be a little bit more, because you'll probably be at worst case a game out at that
Yeah.
point. But you would have to think worst case scenario. I might start to perk up a little bit. But my big thing is everything you said. One, there's two teams you've essentially got to pass. And it really just stings that you don't have the tiebreaker. Again, the three-way tie, but then it gets complicating to the Tigers and Twins to, finish same record. So, which is possible. And it's not a crazy scenario, but I would feel better if we had a tiebreaker. Like, let's say, like you said, Detroit, let's just say they were out of this and you had the tiebreaker against Minnesota, meaning the Mariners. I'd probably feel pretty good with the way the Twins are collapsing. And another thing I think you said that was really important at the beginning of that is, and the Mariners have played a little bit better. Like I said, they'd won 8 out of 11. So I'm probably being a little harsh on them, but this just isn't a team that's on fire necessarily. So I just don't know if I see 7-2. I could see 5-4 pretty easily, which is fine in a vacuum of that stretch, but that's not going to get you in. That's going to put you at 85 to 83 wins. I don't see any way that does it. And that's probably what I would predict them to go. I think there's a chance, even 6-3, and that's winning all 3 series. Right. I don't know if that really even does it without the tiebreakers.
Yes.
So I'm with you. You almost need 7-2. I think is the minimum probably that you have to do. Yep. I think if you go and truly, even 9-0 doesn't even guarantee it if Detroit takes 2 out of 3 from Baltimore. So you're really in a tough spot. It's cool that the games are still meaningful. I'm excited. And then also, one thing I've talked about on the show is one of the reasons for the whiplash is just the team is teetering. They lose the first 2 to Texas and you're kind of done. So they're just in a spot where one loss just always is going to feel like the end of the season.
Agreed.
Anything else you got with the team? Any numbers you had? Anything you want to bring up?
No, I don't at this point. I think just we'll see how the next 9 play out. And I think another thing that kind of complicates this is you probably have Munoz and Taylor that are down tomorrow. Then again, I mean, this late in the season, they may go to them 3 days in a row, but the bullpen has been kind of ran hard and you have 6 games in a row left. So, that complicates it. But yeah, like I said, it's cool. They still have a chance and there's some semblance of hope, no matter how faint it is. So yeah, I mean, go Mariners, Orioles, and Red Sox, and let's hope everything kind of falls our way this weekend, and then we can wake up Monday, go into Houston, and have like a real legit conversation about like, hey, a lot of this is in our control now. So a big weekend, but yeah, a lot has to go right. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and the best thing the Mariners can do, and it's obviously duh, but like just keep winning your games, and if you go 7-2 and don't get in, then I guess kind of so be it at that point. But I'd much rather see this team go down winning than to have some frustrating losses like last night where we go, my gosh, like you'd be a game back if you just now again, like it wasn't a guarantee they were never ahead in the game. They didn't blow a lead necessarily, but it was a very winnable game.
Yeah.
And then to your point too, like the Angels, I will always come back to that. It's very rare in a season where I go, wow, that one team did us in. But my gosh, like the Angels are the reason the 2024 the Mariners have self-inflicted a lot of wounds, but if you got to blame one team, it's the Angels for the Mariners not getting in. Because you just find a way to go 500 against them, which still would be underperforming.
Right.
I mean, you'd be there. So, it's a very unique stretch, but this is it. This is the home stretch now, 9 games to go. All hands on deck, like you said, and Munoz, Taylor got to go 3 days in a row. I think it's kind of like you got to do it and find a way to get the wins.
Yep. Yeah. So hopefully Kirby's on his game tomorrow and we can get the win tomorrow and go from there. And hopefully some help is on the way tomorrow as well. Cause yeah, I mean, with Twins at I think Boston's kind of throwing a fill-in guy, which concerns me tomorrow. And then I think Twins have Pablo Lopez going game 2. So important that Red Sox find a way tomorrow and that Corbin Burns beats the Tigers. But yeah, let's hope tomorrow goes well and we're a game behind both of them. And then it gets, that's the thing. It can get really interesting really quick. I mean, you're 24 hours away from being maybe a game behind if everything goes your way. So it's right there. If a few things can just go our way and we take care of business. So let's hope that happens.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the teetering, right? That they're a couple days away from, I mean, I'm not predicting it, but there's a chance at the end of the weekend, Mariners could be in a playoff spot. Mm-hmm. There's also a chance that we're coming back here Monday going, yeah, this thing's over. So
yep.
Enjoy it, folks. Enjoy the ups and the downs, and try to find some joy in this great game. But, it's a frustrating team. Maybe just hopefully it's a good finish and we're due for some help behind. So appreciate you coming on as always, my friend. Thank you. Always enjoy our conversations. Everybody listening, watching, remember to like, comment, subscribe. I'll be back tomorrow with the post-game recap. And here we go. Final 9 games. Let's see if the Mariners can get in and we can do some shows where we're doing a playoff series preview, because that would be a lot of fun to break down the 2 teams for a playoff series. So we'll see what happens. Have a great night, everybody. And as always, go Mariners.
Bye.